In a dive, uh, Weddell seal blood flow to the abdominal organs is shut, and oxygen-rich blood is diverted to the eyes, brain, and spinal cord. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this adaptation? A, to increase the number of red blood cells in the nervous system? No. To increase the amount of oxygen reaching the skeletal-muscular system? To increase the amount of oxygen reaching the central nervous system? To increase the oxygen concentrated? We need, when he said diving, diving requires lots of vigilance. The central nervous system has to be aware of all the dangers coming. So the answer is C. '64. In general, animal cells differ from plant cells in that animal cells have. This is a tricky question. Many students pick B or D. The answer, of course, is D. Why D? Plants do have cell division. However, they don't have centrioles and centrosomes. They have poles, which is not fully developed organelles like centrosomes, but poles where spindle fibers attach to during cell division. So they don't have a fully developed centriole centrosome. Now, what about lysosomes? Yes and no. Lower plants have lysosomes, but higher plants don't have lysosomes. A cell from the leaf of the aquatic plant Elodea was soaked in a 15% sugar solution, and its contents soon separated from the cell wall and formed a mass in the center of the cell. All the following statements are true about except. Vacuole lost water and become smaller. Yeah, this is one. Space between cell wall and the cell membrane expanded. Yes, the plasmolysis. Larger vacuoles contain the solution with much lower osmotic pressure than. That's also true. The answer is D, the concentration of solutes. Remember, solutes they are talking about. Okay. Because the concentration of sugar outside is 15%, but the solute outside is going to be hypertonic in respect to the cell. So this is the answer. Remember that they ask about the except, which means this is the one, the D, because it's not hypertonic. The water outside is hypotonic because it has so much sugar outside. So much sugar outside means less water, which means hypotonic. They said hypotonic, and this is the exception. A chemical agent is found to denature all enzymes in the synaptic cleft. What effect will this agent have on acetylcholine? Number one, all students make mistakes with these questions because they think neurotransmitters are enzymes. Neurotransmitters are not enzymes. Enzymes, they speed up reactions by lower activation energy. But this is not the function of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, they just go from presynaptic cleft to postsynaptic cleft and convey a message. So they don't mean acetylcholine, they mean the acetylcholine esterase. When we release neurotransmitters in the brain, we have enzymes to break them down. They're not supposed to float for a longer time. So we have acetylcholine esterase, which is the enzyme that break down acetylcholine. So let me see which of these options is true. And acetylcholine will not be released from the presynaptic membrane. Acetylcholine will. This is a tough question. Okay, acetylcholine will not be degraded in the synaptic lift. Why? Because the chemical we added, it will break down enzymes. Okay, acetylcholine esterase, which is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, so the enzyme will be degraded. If the acetylcholine esterase will be denatured, acetylcholine will not be affected. So acetylcholine will not be degraded in the synaptic cleft. The base composition of DNA varies from one species to another. Which of the following ratio would be which you expect to remain constant in the DNA? Easy question. Cytosine doesn't go with adenine. Adenine doesn't go with guanine. Guanine, yeah. The answer is B. Pyrimidine and purine. They maintain ratio. In reptiles, egg, the extraembryonic membrane that functions in excretion and respiration is okay. What's the yolk sac? Yolk sac is the food for the embryo, so it's not it. Where is the allantois? The allantois is the analogy for placenta. Birds and reptiles, they don't have placenta, they have allantois. So the allantois is the answer. A chorion is the outermost membrane, the outermost membrane. So allantois is, there is a allantois in birds and reptiles, like placenta in mammals. 68. Consider the following enzymes pathway. An increased substance F leads to the inhibition of enzyme 3. All the following are the result of the process except 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. An increase of substance. This requires lots of thinking. Oh, except increase activity enzyme F. Okay, why? Increase of substance F leads to inhibition of 3. Okay, when we inhibit 3, we will increase the activity of 6. Yes. And we will decrease the activity of 4. Yes. But the increased activity of enzyme 5, no. The liver is a vital organ that performs all the following functions except storing amino acids that were absorbed in the capillaries of the small intestine, detoxifying harmful substances, okay, synthesizing bile, breaking down, okay, they do synthesize biles, they do detoxification. This is function number 1 of the liver. They store amino acid that were absorbed, yes, but they don't break down peptides into amino acid. That happens in the small intestine. In the liver, we do demiation, which means taking amino acids, and we take the amino group NH2. Then we do lots of biochemical processes that make it into NH3 ammonia. Then at the end, it will be urea. But we don't break down peptides into amino acids. The graph above shows the oxygen dissociation curve of maternal hemoglobin and fetal hemoglobin. Based on the graph, it can be concluded that Fetal hemoglobin surrenders O2 more readily. The dissociation curve of fetal hemoglobin is to right. Fetal hemoglobin has a higher affinity for O2 than does maternal. This is, we already know this. We took this in during the class. The fetal hemoglobin has higher affinity. Higher affinity means it has a stronger affinity or a stronger attachment to oxygen. In minks, the gene for brown fur, capital B, is dominant over the gene for silver fur, small b, which set to genotype represent a cross that could produce offspring with silver fur from parents that have both brown fur. I think this is easy. Yeah, once again, it's C. Heterozygous, capital B, small b, capital B, small b. Hemoglobin is a molecule that binds to both O2 and CO2. There is an allosteric relationship between the concentration of O2 and CO2. Hemoglobin's affinity for O2. Yes, that's definitely A is the answer. Decreases as blood pH decreases, meaning when blood becomes acidic, you know, hemoglobin affinity to the oxygen decreases. Why? Because we need to release more oxygen. And when do blood becomes acidic? When we have higher concentration of CO2. So higher concentration of CO2 will have acidity in the blood, which means now it's time for the oxygen to be released readily. All viruses contain at least these two principal components. That's an easy question: DNA and protein, nucleic acids. RNA and cell wall, no. DNA and cell membrane, nucleic acid and a capsid. The capsid made out of protein and nucleic acid. Nucleic acid could be an RNA or DNA. Remember, viruses could have DNA or RNA. All the following differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes except eukaryotes have linear chromosomes while prokaryotes have circular chromosomes. Eukaryotes possess double. Eukaryotes contain membrane-bound organelles while prokaryotes do not. Okay. Eukaryotes process their messenger RNA while prokaryotes transcription and translation occurs simultaneously. Okay. Eukaryotes possess double-strand DNA while prokaryotes possess single-strand DNA. Okay. Eukaryotes have linear chromosomes while prokaryotes have circular chromosomes. You know, the answer when they said chromosomes, prokaryotes, they have only one chromosome. So this is, they got you with this one. So the answer is A. We have only one circular DNA, we call it nucleoid. So it's not even, you know, circular DNA, it's not a chromosome. In humans, fertilization normally occur in the many students put the uterus or the ovary, actually fallopian tubes. Fertilization happens in fallopian tubes. After that, the zygote moves down to the ovary. The development of an egg without fertilization is known to. It doesn't happen with mammals. It happens with lizards, reptilian. You know, parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis, when a woman does not need a man. meaning females will develop an egg to a fully developed embryo without the fertilization of a man. We call it, or a male, we call it parthenogenesis. All following are examples of hydrolysis except conversion of fats to fatty acid and glycerol, okay. Conversion of protein to amino acids, okay. Conversion of starch, conversion of pyruvic acid and acetyl. Okay, of course, this is the one. Why? Because when we have pyruvic acid and we move to acetyl-CoA, we do decarboxylation, which is carboxyl group is removed. We remove a carboxyl group in this process. It's not hydrolysis, it's called decarboxylation. In cells, which of the following can catalyze reaction involving hydrogen peroxide, provide cellular energy, and make protein? Peroxisomes, mitochondria, and ribosomes. Let's say they went hydrogen peroxide, then cellular, so mitochondria comes next, then making protein. So we have to have peroxisomes, mitochondria, and ribosomes. Now, what's peroxisomes? They produce hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. Okay, mitochondria for cellular energy, okay. Ribosomes for protein. Now, what's lysosomes? Of course, the answer is A, but let's go with the answer is A. Lysosomes, they don't have hydrogen peroxides. They have hydrolytic enzymes to break down worn out cells. Lysosomes, they break down worn out cells, but they don't contain H2O2. All of the following play an important role in regulating respiration in humans except an increase in the amount of CO2 in the blood. Of course, this is a tough question, by the way. In your blood vessels, like the carotid, for example, there are many sensors. The sensors are for CO2. When the level of CO2 increase, which means when you are working out or you bring lots of exercising, this is one way to regulating respiration. Decreasing in the amount of O2 in the blood, no. All of the sensors in the carotid arteries and in other major arteries, they test or they check or they sense CO2. So decreased oxygen is no. The primary set of glucose reabsorption is the in the kidney. We do filtration, glucose, vitamins, water, and all the toxins leave the renal arteries at the Bowman's capsules, and we reabsorb only the good stuff, the stuff that we need. Glucose is one of them. Glucose is the first one to be reabsorbed. So we have filtration, then reabsorption. The first one we reabsorb is glucose and happens at the proximal convoluted tubules. Proximal convoluted tubules. Question 82, 83 refers to the following information. The graph below shows the growth curve of a bacterial culture. Which of the following represents carrying capacity of the environment? But it's 5 right there. The carrying capacity is 5, which is D. 5 is D. Which of the following shows the exponential growth curve of the population? Exponential growth curve. We have either 2 or 3. Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. My bad. The growth exponentially, if you remember, when we do exponent y equal x squared, this, I can't see it clearly, but this is the number 4. But with 2 and 3, we have y equals the graph 1 over x, I believe. But no, for sure, a y equal x squared is number 4. This is how exponential growth. So it's 4. All of the following statements are true except thyroxine increases the rate of metabolism. It's true, it does. Insulin decreases the storage of glycogen. No, of course, this is the answer because they said except. Insulin will increase the storage of glycogen. Let's go to vasopressin. Vasopressin works at the kidney with the angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2. In case of lower blood pressure, we need to increase blood pressure. One way to bring blood pressure higher is to reabsorb more water. When we reabsorb more water, we bring pressure higher. Another way is to do vasoconstriction. When we have vasoconstriction, we bring blood pressure. Epinephrine increase blood sugar levels to heart rate. Yeah. Metafemale syndrome, a disorder in which the female has an extra X chromosome, is the result of nondisjunction. The failure of in oogenesis that could produce this would occur in. Of course, many students they stuck on 2 answers. Anaphase 2 or anaphase. Of course, we don't have anaphase 1. Okay, it's anaphase 2. We don't have anaphase 1, which makes it, they made it easier. But if we had anaphase 1, assume they gave you anaphase 1 and anaphase 2. Which one, what's the difference? If it happens in anaphase 1, we would have 2 extra, we have 2x. We would have 2 extra X chromosomes. Yes, because in anaphase. But since we only have 1 extra X, that means it happens in anaphase 2 because we are separating sister chromatids. Are you with me? Okay. In plants, the tendency of climbing vines to twine their tendrils around the thrills is called, we discussed this yesterday, thigmotropism, which means plants, they have the tendency to grow side by side next to objects. Plants grow next to buildings, climb buildings, we call them thigmotropism. Females with Turner syndromes have a higher incidence of hemophilia, a recessive X-linked trait. Based on this information, it can be inferred that females with this condition have an extra. Of course, Turner syndromes, they have 45 chromosomes. They have 45 missing, lack an X chromosome. Yes, they lack X chromosomes. Of course, Turner syndrome, they don't have mental retardation like Down syndrome. They just have physical deformities. But Turner syndromes, they have 45 chromosomes, not 46. When a retrovirus inserted its DNA into the middle of a bacterial gene, it altered the normal reading frame by one base pair. This type of mutation is called, look for keywords, inserted, insertion or deletion. Definitely, you're looking at frame shift. Frame shift mutation, we all know what frame shift mutation. High levels of estrogen from maturing follicles inhibit the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone GnRH, which of the following endocrine glands produces GnRH? It's the hypothalamus. GnRH is what initiate the whole process. Remember, hypothalamus is the linkage between our nervous system and our endocrine system. Next to the hypothalamus, we have the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is a master gland, but the pituitary gland releasing growth hormone, LH, FSH, TSH, ACTH, will not function without the guidance of hypothalamus. The principal inorganic compound found in living things is, many people, they keep saying that water is organic. Water is inorganic, and all living liquids contains H2O.